You're listening to Solera Innovation Labs, where automotive experts from around the world discuss technology trends in mobility and debate tomorrow's rules of the road. Whether you're a technician, a dealer, an appraiser, a car lover, or anything in between, we'll discuss topics that will keep you up to date and help you and your business win.
This is our first episode. We're excited to introduce you to one of our hosts, Don Mikrut. Don has been in the automotive industry for over 20 years and has a whole wealth of information about insurance and collision, and I'm sure he can tell you a lot about other subjects as well, hockey being one of them. He's basically our go-to guy if we ever have questions about insurer partners, how a piece of legislation will affect people, trends we should be starting a conversation on. So before we get to all of Don's experience, I'm going to introduce myself. I am a content writer on the marketing team, and my colleagues affectionately call me the keeper of words. That's their idea, not mine. But the show isn't about me. It's about Don and all of his insight and expertise. So Don's ready to take the wheel and kick off our first episode.
Wow, what a great introduction.
Oh,
what a lead in for
Thanks.
me, right?
Yeah, just rolling out the red carpet. So Don, give us your background with the industry. Where did you start out?
See, now that's a great question. And I started really learning about the industry when I was about 17, 18 years of age. So just as I was entering high school. But I was a swimmer, and one of the girls I swam with, her dad had a body shop. And at some point in time, as most young adolescent boys get into vehicles, I had a car that was an older Camaro that kind of had some bumps and bruises on it. And I really, really wanted to fix all the bumps and bruises on it and paint it. And of course, as a kid growing up, you learn about motors and brakes, and I was able to do all that fun stuff to my own car. And I want to learn how to do that stuff. So I decided from work to take off a week, really. That's what I told them. I take off a week, and I was going to go fix this car, right, in my garage. There's waves in the door and a couple of dents and things. This is a used car. And then I was going to paint it. And it was a two-tone, red and black. I talked to my friend's dad, and he said, son, I hope you have more than just a week off. I said, come on, we can get this done in a week, right? He says, what do you mean we? He says, you. So that's kind of how I got introduced to the industry to an extent, is that I decided to go and fix all the waves and dents and things in the car and then paint it myself, right? Because I wanted to go do all that stuff. So here it is, I take a week off of work, and 6 weeks later, the car was back on the road, right? So I learned a lot about the industry from there. That was an introduction. And then as I went to college, one of the classmates I had, her father had a body shop and was looking, as I was getting done with my education, he was looking for someone to come in and help him market his business. And I got my degree in marketing from Purdue. And I wasn't sure that I really wanted to get in the body shop side of the house, right? I'm like, this didn't really interest me. I was a fitness guy and an athlete, and I like cars, but not, was this going to be a career? But anyways, I went over and saw a shop, and it was a nice shop. I always envisioned the body shop was a dog tied to the chain, right? Protecting the cars in the back in a dusty, dirty environment. And it wasn't. It was a really nice professional office, and everything was, the shop was a little dingy and dusty, but the office was nice and professional. And the gentleman just wouldn't take no for an answer. He really wanted me to come in and help market his business. And that's how I started in the industry. So I started with him and went out and started visiting insurance agents and what have you to try and drive business to his establishment. And what I found very quickly in the industry was that there's this difference between standard and non-standard insurance. Not every state has the non-standard insurance, but to kind of speak to these type of drivers that may get non-standard insurance is once they hit something, they back up and they hit it again before they ever bring it in. It's just constantly they're damaging cars, right? The high risk driver. And this gentleman's shop was doing a ton of repairs for high risk, right? They're non-standard. So I learned a lot about the industry with this shop. It's some really crazy things, and people listening to this podcast will probably kind of go, holy cow, these things are crazy. For example, he had a 3 to 4 week backlog and never cared. And cars were sitting, right? So a towing would come in and go, hey, man, it's going to take 6 weeks before I can get to it. because in the non-standard world, they didn't even have rental coverage, right? So you weren't worrying about rental running out or any of that stuff. It's just he had a backlog, and it is what it is. When I get it in, I get it in. And but I learned a lot from this gentleman in the industry. And as I went and did the marketing, I also got into starting to learn how to write estimates, right? And I'll kind of cut it when I get done with the estimate story. And I think everyone who's ever learned how to write a collision estimate can have these type of experiences. But he sends me out to the yard with a notepad and paper, by the way, to go write the damages on a total loss.
Old school.
You write down the notes. But anyways, I go out there and I pop the hood and I write down everything, all the damages, core support, headlight, just frame rail, just going through everything that was damaged on this car. And I'm, so proud of myself. I write it down and I go back in and I start to go put it in. And at the time, it was ADP software. This is before Solera bought Autotex. It was ADP, and then it turned to Autotex Estimate. And so it was ADP Estimate. So I go in and I start to put it into the electronic estimating software. I'm good at computers, no problem, right? College grad, go to put in there, and for some reason I only have 15 characters of a 17-character VIN number, right? So that's the first thing. I got to go back out and rewrite down the VIN number again, right? What was missing. But when I finally got done, I wrote the estimate and I got it through it, and I'm so proud. I hand it off to my boss and I say, hey, here's the estimate. He looks it over, spends a couple minutes on it, finally looks at me and says, did you forget something? I'm like, what in the world could I forget? I actually left the hood off on everything else that you wrote, because you popped the hood. So you write down all the damages you can around the car, but the one thing you forgot was the hood that was up. It was just one of those experiences when you first start writing estimates that you remember. And that was one of mine. So that's kind of how I got into the industry. And from there, I never got out of it. When I started working for him, I got into helping run the shop, to running the software and his IT and running marketing. And it just expanded from there, where I moved from him to a smaller multiple shop owner. And from there, we grew his business from 3 stores to 5. It was 5. And then we added a towing center to support the collision, which was really kind of fun. And at that point, I was doing a lot of sales and marketing for him. I ran all of his IT. And then I started getting into some, what we'll call regional management, helping oversee multiple stores. But then I would fill in for a manager if he went on vacation, or if he let someone go as a manager, I would run the store for 2 or 3 months as we found the next one, and then help train them. And eventually, this owner became part of one of the first 20 groups in the industry called Coyote Vision Group. And the Coyote Vision Group was put together where business owners that were non-competitive would get together and share their financials and things that they do in their business to help one another out, to become stronger, better, and faster. And they would compare some of the things that they were doing and work off best practices, if you will. So he was part of that group. And over the time, they started bringing in their sales and marketing teams to kind of work together. And eventually, they brought in some speakers, and one of the speakers started talking about consolidation that was going on in the jobber space. The jobber space being where the paint suppliers, the paint manufacturers, will sell their products to jobbers, and jobbers will go out and sell them to the body shops. And so there was some consolidation going on in there. And so everyone started listening to this. And there were some very key influencers in the collision space, multiple shop operators from this 20 group. Everyone in this 20 group were multiple shop operators. And they all started having this look in their eyes like, consolidation. And believe it or not, that's where truly the consolidation in the collision space started, was in that meeting. And several of those guys started to get together, and 3 or 4 of them formed the first MSO group that started consolidating and getting some venture money to back them in the consolidation process. So I know it's a long answer to the question of how I got started, but it speaks a lot about how the industry has moved, as well as how I learned the industry. So how's that for an opening question and
That's
answer?
Great. No, yeah. I mean, I'm really impressed. You were really a one-man band at that first shop. So I had no idea you had marketing experience there too. It's good to know.
Yeah. So it's, Well, I think you guys in the marketing team wouldn't look at me as a marketer anymore, right? As some of the things in marketing have changed over the time since I was in school. But nonetheless, that's kind of how I got my start.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. So we've got your background, we've got your history. Tell us what you're up to now. What's your expertise in, and what do you work on day to day?
Well, I think that it bolds to a couple of other questions, right? And I think it's good. So my expertise, as you heard about my background, it really how I got started. It goes a couple steps further, and I'll accelerate it just from the standpoint that at some point in time, I was the CEO and president of a company called Cars Collision Center. We had 28 stores in 3 states, and we did about $75 million in revenue. And some of the things that are unique about it is at one point in time, we were the 4th and 5th largest MSO. By the time we sold, we were the 6th largest MSO in the country when we sold back in 2011. So it can tell you a lot about where the industry and how fast it's gone, considering now your large MSOs are anywhere between 5 to 1,000 plus locations, right? But we built our own software. And I say that because it really kind of ties into what I do every day and how I got here. In order for us to be successful, and we were funded by private equity, we were using all sorts of different shop solutions in the marketplace as far as management is concerned and managing your business. And none of them really served all the purposes or all the nuances and items that you need to address in running a business. And I say that because when people think about shop management, they think about running production. And that's part of it. But truly shop management is running your entire business. That's from hiring an employee to managing holidays and vacations, right? To dealing with write-ups and reviews, to paying your technicians, to pushing information to accounting, right? Dealing with profitability, job costing. I mean, there's all these things that fall into it. So we were looking for many years at a management system, and it just wasn't working out. And the industry didn't have what we were looking for. So I went ahead and hired my own developer and started to build my own solutions. Now, part of that started from another quick comment and story is that State Farm, as it stands today, has a program called Select Service. And when it first came out, it was a brand new program that was piloted in Chicagoland with a competitor of ours at the time called Gerber and ourselves. And to be on that program, when it first came out, for those that remember, in order to qualify, you had to have a call center. Now, you say a call center, everyone thinks of someone picking up the phone, right? And calling out and dialing for dollars kind of call centers. And we would go back to the industry, including State Farm, and say, what is it this call center is supposed to do, right? And no one could really tell us what it was supposed to do, but you needed one to qualify to be on this program. And State Farm being one of the largest insurers in the country and a very strong partner of ours when I had Cars Collision, you start to go do your research and do it. So we figured out what it is that we wanted our call center to do. And then we started to go look for technology that could do it. None of them was out there. So that's part of the first things that we built was our own call center software to be able to manage all of the incoming assignments from any direct repair program that we were a part of. And instead of it being, so kind of talking a little bit, and Betsy, maybe this helps for you, when you look at a traditional DRP, and now today is different than what it was when we built our call center. An assignment would come to you electronically at the shop. And what it was is, here's the customer information. And the shop's responsibility at that point in time was to not only look at all of those, right? Because it wasn't like you got pop-ups and alerts like you do today. You had to go check an inbox. And at that point in time, it was hit a button to invoke the dial-up. And then you would hear it connect through the modem and then pull in new assignments, right? I mean, that's how far back it goes. So you look at those assignments coming in, and you had it then printed out. You did a reach out to the customer and get them scheduled to come in and get an estimate done. And that's fine. It sounds great and shops had no problem with it. But when you start to get a shop that same person that's responsible for that is also writing all the estimates that come in, that's also dealing with the insurance adjuster coming in the back when he's writing a supplement, or a technician that found more damages that you need to go deal with. What you found is insurance companies had a KPI that were saying, here's how long it took from assignment being sent to you to when you even got an estimate done. And that was one of their KPIs they managed. And it was not a good KPI for many, many, many shops because you get distracted a lot,
Sure.
right, inside the business. So the call center was, hey, let's take all of those away from the shops. All right, we got 28 shops. Take them all away. Let them all go to a specialized group of people. That's all their job is. Let me just call it an assignment and let me schedule it to come in and get that estimate or the repair. And so that's what we did. And we built our solution to go do that. And we were the second one in the industry. I say the first to get to the call center to do what it does. I'd say Gerber would argue a little bit that we both were fighting down that same path to be the first in the industry. But the two of us were the first to have a call center and truly make it function in that manner. And we built technology to go do it. And then from there, we built a complete shop management solution with its own CRM solution in there for sales, to be out calling on agents and insurance companies and fleets and dealers, right? And that data synced into it. And then we also had the ability to do what's called low level. And we actually can manage the low level through our call center. So because of the solution we built in the shop, we were able to take a look at the shop's capacity. And people always wonder shop capacity. And I think there's probably a ton of discussion about what is that capacity? How do you measure that capacity, right? Some people would say, I got a box that's 10,000 square foot, right? And this is the number I can do out of that box. And I argue that point all the time. And everyone's got their own opinion. And there's no right or wrong way. What we did as an organization is that we took capacity based on the skill set of the technicians I had there. And part of it that we built, and again, this talks about why I'm at Solera today, is because we built solutions that did these things, right? So we built capacity planning based on the skill set of the technicians that we had at the store. Because not every technician is as skilled as the other one. And based on that skill set will determine what your throughput is. And you still have to go manage them, don't get me wrong. But if you're managing them to the best of their ability, what is their output? And based on that would then create my capacity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So, and we built it where it was learning based on their payroll and their productivity each time that we did payroll. So every time we did payroll, it would become more and more intelligent. And then that tied into scheduling for us. So it would then be able to help the call center schedule appropriately, and then also low level work. So if a store was close to that customer, but couldn't handle the job for 4 or 5 days and the customer wanted in, and there's another shop across town that could, we could then say, hey, just drop it off at the shop that's closest to you. As long as you're okay with us moving it, we'll go move it, fix it, and bring it back for you. And we were very, very successful. To the tune of about $3 million in revenue a year, we were load leveling from one store to the other to create the efficiency inside the operation, which drove more profitability for the business and obviously made our insurance partners much happier with cycle times and measurements. So that kind of talks about some of my expertise in what I do on a regular basis today in managing multiple sales groups for Solera Autotech, from not only the collision space, in the glass space, and also in the mechanical space. Then I also deal with a couple of product lines that are in the shop management space, which makes sense, right? Based on what I've done in my past. Some of these that are private labeled, and some of them are white labeled, if you will, and some of them that are there for all shops to use. And we have large MSOs using these solutions, as well as we have small independent shops, as well as networks or franchise groups using the shop management solutions. And so I manage the team of product owners to help cultivate what are the next features and solutions that we need to add in integrations to make that product more streamlined and effective for our users. So kind of talks about what I do kind of every day. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
As well as where my expertise is.
Some of it's way over my head, but I was following. Well, I want to go back
Were
to...
you following?
Yeah. I'm barely holding on. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said that the shop that you worked at, you had to build your own solution because what you had was not functioning for what you needed it to. So what alternatives do shops have if they can't produce that type of software or that solution? Who can they go to, or what can they do to make their business just more efficient and, be able to provide those services?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And when I was doing it back as a shop owner, I was trying to find something that could serve all those masters, and I had to deal with private equity, and there's a lot of accountability features and functionality I needed, and I had to go build those. When I sold my business, I sold the software with it. How I ended up at Solera is because the company I sold my business to asked me to help them sell the software, and I did. And the company that bought it was Solera. So all of those features and functionalities that I had built back in my day of running a shop, we had rebuilt into a SaaS-based solution that is being used by one of the largest MSOs today. So what do shops do? I think the first thing that shops need to really take a look at is how are they managing their facility today from a software perspective, not just estimating, right? Because today, I think people kind of get confused. I think some people go to QuickBooks to kind of manage their business versus a true shop management and production management solution. Some just want production management that helps them, order parts, what's going on with the back end with my techs. So really, I think kind of reaching out to someone like us at Solera that have the expertise and the background to be able to help you take a look at where you're at in your business today. Because not everyone needs every feature functionality that we offer, right, in our solutions. So they have to take a look at what are their pain points today. And that's the cool thing about the solutions that we offer now is that we cover those pain points. But we can do it in a way that as we work with that shop owner, what are those pain points today? Let's go address those. Let's make sure that you're feeling comfortable that it's driving the performance and the accuracy that you need in your shop. And then we can go back and revisit some of the other feature functionalities that are available to now enhance it as you move forward. I think that's what most shop owners, and they would probably all say yes, that what they're doing today, they weren't doing 6 months ago or a year ago or 3 years ago. And if they could even imagine 3 years ago that they'd be doing what they're doing today, they'd be like, holy cow, I can't, So I think there's a lot of those aha moments if you sit back and reflect. But using the expertise of someone like us at Solera to say, hey, Don, your team, can they come in and take a look at what's going on in my organization and tell me what you think, right? And I think it's the best way to take a look at it to drive what's there. Because some guys are just saying, you know what, I'm good at production. I only got 3 guys in the back, but I struggle on parts and reconciliation. Because one of the things that people don't realize, and I'll tell you this, Betsy, because I think you look at this and go, really, that's how it works? When I had 28 stores, you buy a lot of parts, right? I was buying hundreds of thousands of dollars of parts a month. Actually, yeah, it was a lot. But what ends up happening is there's times I get a part that I don't need anymore or was the wrong part. And so I need to go return that part. How do you manage that return? Because here's the interesting side. And I think some of your large MSOs are conquering it now, but your smaller shops still struggle with this. That is, when I get a statement from that supplier, from that OEM that I bought all those parts from, they don't subtract my returns or pending returns. I pay for every part, including the ones I need to send back. And then I have to go fight with them to come pick up the ones that I'm telling them I don't need. Not only just pick them up, but also to give me the credit. It's a constant cycle that every body shop has to deal with on a day in and day out basis, is the returns and managing those returns. So that could be one source in a shop today where they're losing money because no one's really managing their returns, and they have parts sitting in a corner that they're going, yeah, I gotta get those returned. Well, you paid for them. Where's that margin, right?
Right.
And that's just one example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking toward the future and sort of the present challenges we see and the challenges we see on the horizon, what are some topics, some issues that people in the industry may not be talking about right now, or they're maybe thinking it'll be an issue down the road? What are some present challenges that insurers and shops might need our expertise on, or or see as challenges in the future?
Great question. I think a lot of them are seeing what the challenges in the future. I think crystal ball wise, it's hard to say, right? I think telematics and ADAS, right? All of those accident avoidance type technologies are truly driving a change in the industry. Pre and post scanning, calibrations, right? Who's responsible for codes on a car? So when I say that codes on a car, today manufacturers are recommending, I guess is their terminology, or strongly recommending that cars are scanned before you do the repair. And so why do you scan them? Well, and you got to go back years ago, and I even just go back 10 years ago, the number of computers in a car were very, very minimal, right? Your high-end Mercedes, BMW, some of them had more computers on them than not. But your average car today is going to have anywhere between 15 to 20 different computer modules on it running the vehicle. And that's expanding. It's just growing, right? So the car is evolving faster than we even know. I mean, it's seeing what's on the road. It's monitoring a blind spot. It's going to apply the brake if you are going too fast and possibly hit someone, right? So all of these things need to make sure that they're functioning properly. And in a collision today, I think people truly don't realize the connectivity of a component on a car to the rest of the computer modules. An example is a Nissan Rogue. Okay. At one point we had a Nissan Rogue, and let's just say you take it in to get an oil change, and the guy looks at your wipers and says, you need a new wiper arm, a blade, right? And he takes the wiper arm and he's going to put a new wiper blade on it, but for some reason he disconnects the arm in order to go do it, which sometimes will happen, right? That in and of itself, when we scanned that car afterwards, the results we got was about 17 codes on the car.
Wow.
That were triggered. So I think there's this unknown risk or liability of what's there, but I think the challenge for the industry is building a database. See, there's a current database out there today that says when a code's thrown on a car, in the mechanical world, there's a database out there strongly that says here's what the code means, right? And we have our own database with Identifix, a Solera company that will tell you what that code means. Actually, they call it code assist, where it'll tell you the definition of that code, and then it'll tell you what the most likely cause of that code is and the most probable fixes of that cause of that code. That's great. And it's all mechanically related because that's where most of that stuff started. Most of your computer modules were mechanically related to the car. To give an example, and I drove, I had a Lexus GS F Sport. Loved the car, right? And one day, because I'm a fitness guy, I get up early in the morning and I go to the gym. So I get out of the gym, get my car, and my power steering isn't working. That's kind of weird. I'm like, all right, the car's not that old. It should be fine, right? I can't believe a power steering pump's going to go out on this thing. And I said a power steering pump, so that tells you how old I am, right? But I get in the car and I call the Lexus dealer and they said, well, hey, you're going to have to bring it in. And it's not easy to drive, right? I mean, you can steer it, but it's not easy. You really don't. But it was all done by wire. It's all done by computer. The computer actually changes how my power steering works. It's all done by the computer. And I can change it with one of the settings in the car. That's what hence the F Sport feature. But when that computer went out, you got nothing, right? So people don't realize how sophisticated these vehicles get and how reliant you are today on what used to be mechanical is now becoming more technology driven and computer driven. Does that make sense?
Software based, yeah. So it's safe to say an average consumer really doesn't know how intricate and how complex their car is. And that's just like evolving, present day. It's getting even more complex.
Yeah. And you take a look at someone like Toyota, who came out and said that, all their cars are going to have backup sensors by this 2020, and they're all going to have blind spot monitoring. I mean, so take a look at how they're trying to push this. And if you remember, and again, I date myself because I remember before anti-lock brakes came out.
You keep saying that, Dan, but 50 is the new 40.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm saying it's a new 30. How's that?
Even better.
But when anti-lock brakes first came out, and I remember they were on the high-end Mercedes, and it was very, very, very expensive for that technology. And today it's now on every car you buy, right? And you start to take a look at all these things that are on the high-end cars, even the autonomous feature or functionality. And there's 5 different levels of autonomous driving. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And what Tesla's done, and now what Cadillac has in the CT6, where you take long drives and you can essentially sit back and let it drive for you. You know, you got to be in the seat, but you don't even have to have your hands on the steering wheel, right? So where does this go, and how fast does it change? I think everyone was scared at one point when they talked about autonomous and all the computer stuff that, are there going to be accidents anymore, right? Well, the answer is cars are going to talk to one another at some point. But it doesn't mean you're not going to run into a fire hydrant or hit a small tree or something along those lines, or get the minor fender benders. You're still bumped. Things are still going to happen, but it's going to reduce, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to become better, but it doesn't mean that the industry in and of itself goes away.
Right. And not to mention the fixes will be even more complex as well.
Yeah, and I think that's so I'm part of the CREF, which is a collision education foundation, and it's all about generating revenue or income to go help facilitate vocational centers to have the right curriculum and to invite students in to become familiar with the industry, because we have a huge lack of technicians, right? But the technician need is changing, right? The body work turns into somewhat body and somewhat mechanical now, right? If you go out and talk to most of your body shops today, they're employing a mechanic as well as a bodyman and a painter because of the sophistication of these vehicles. But that being said, we also have to make sure, and people will be listening going, yeah, but the average age of the car on the road is 11 years in age, and it's actually growing a little bit past 11.
Right.
The average age of a car being repaired is just under 6 years of age, right? So when you look at all the features going out on the 2020 cars or the 2019 cars, when does that become the norm? And it's safe to say it's minimum of 11 years before every car is equipped with that, right? If everyone started today doing it, simply because of the average age of a vehicle today on the road. But then you start looking at what comes into the shop to be repaired from a collision perspective. And when it's less than 6 years of age, it changes that dynamic a little bit, right? So does it mean in the collision space, it's a 6 or 7 year window before you start to see the change in the need? And that's why you're seeing them having mechanics. They're doing pre and post scanning on cars, calibrations. And even now it's crazy because calibrations will tell you, in order to calibrate something, you need a full tank of gas. Well, I dropped off my car. It was close to being on E, right? So who's now responsible at the shop level to go, and can I go bill an insurance company if I have to go fill up the car to have a full tank of gas so I can do a calibration? And oh, by the way, in order to finish the calibration, I also have to drive it so many miles, right, before I give it back to a customer and make sure that they feel safe and it's back to pre-accident condition.
To check it out. Mm-hmm.
And then the problem is that it's moving so fast and the information doesn't keep up as quickly into the shop side. And it's also getting the insurers to understand that these things are necessary evils. It's hard to go back to an insurer and say, I got to go test drive the car. Well, it's not test drive anymore. Now I have to go calibrate it, and part of calibration is test drive. Or do I just roll it up in the calibration fee? But, you start looking at California bar and some of the things going on, I need to be very descriptive in what's being done in that vehicle to the customer and being very transparent. So a lot of moving parts happen. I know I'm speaking a lot.
No. That's great. And not every shop is equipped to do those calibrations, correct? You might have to outsource even that work to another shop.
Absolutely. Because today there's different configurations. Some will tell you that you need, 90 feet or 75 feet in front of the vehicle to hang targets. And then some of them will calibrate. So who has the space and who also has all the specific components necessary for each make or model? So yeah, a lot of them are, you sub it to a dealer or they find third-party groups that can come do some of the stuff with remote calibrations and diagnostics where they can drive out to the body shops and help.
Interesting.
So there are myriad of ways of getting it done.
Fascinating. Wow. I just wrote a blog on a vehicle needing sensor recalibration on their steering wheel. And I just found it fascinating that is now like a legitimate fix that techs are experiencing every day. They have to remember that the sensor is an additional part of the fix. So that's just how our industry is changing. Next question. Yeah. What are you going to talk about on your episodes of the podcast? What are you excited to discuss and chat with guests?
I think it just depends on the guest. I think some of the things that are exciting about it, to be quite honest with you, is we got to talk about training, right? So we got to talk about where the industry is going. How do we provide them with information? How does Solera play a role in that information that comes out there? Is it through some of the other companies that we have, like Identifix, building some collision repair procedures, and the mechanical stuff that we have and own? So those are, you want to get excited about talking about how do you make our industry better? And so you bring in people that can help us from a knowledge base on training. Is it bringing someone like 3M in that talk about some of their products and what they do, the glues, the adhesives that are out there, right, that meet the manufacturer's specifications, so that when you're following the repair procedures properly, these are the glues that you can use, right? As well as talking to some of the MSO shops about what's driving them, what keeps them up at night, right? How do they drive consistency in the shop? Things that other shop owners can listen to and say, oh, that makes sense, right? Something I can take a look at. So really, it needs to be, I'm excited to help inform the industry is really what it gets down to. How do we inform and it's not just the shop side, it can be the insurance side, it can be the glass side of the house, because we deal with the glass, and then how mechanicals pulling it, because all of this cultivates into the repair. And I think people forget that in a collision, I can have a windshield break, but someone knows that a windshield and a back glass is structural components of a car. And someone will go, really? It's structural? It's considered structural, right? So if they're not done correctly, right, there's an issue. If the windshield's put in and it's an aftermarket windshield and the curvature is slightly off, then the forward-facing cameras may not function properly when you try and do your calibrations. See, these are the things that we want to talk about. These are the things that we need to be enlightening our viewers and listeners to. I can't say viewers, right? Because we're going to be more audio than visual. But
oh no, we're going live.
We're going to go live.
In a few
people
weeks.
are going to see my face. All right. See? Then I can't use my radio voice. See, I like to do those kind of things as well. But so that's what excites me. Is really, I guess you can hear it in my voice too. Is it really is. How do we take the industry and help cultivate that, knowing the expertise that we have at Solera and how we can leverage it, and then bring in other experts to help inform the industry.
Well, speaking of experts, who is your ideal guest?
My ideal guest? Well, I think there's a couple of them I think that you want to have out there. I think, to be honest with you, I think one of the most ideal people to bring in, I think would be interesting for listeners, would be to bring in just the normal customer of a shop, or the average person. And I say average, and it's the wrong terminology, right? I just want to bring in a consumer and start to ask them about it, because I think the thing that we miss as an industry, and this happens in every industry, is you forget what the customer's experience truly is like. And we all think we know it. And the reality is, I don't think we do. Absolutely. So what I think would be really awesome to do is to constantly bring in just a consumer that may have gone through an accident or just experienced one and hasn't gotten their car fixed yet. And what's your expectation? What do you think is going to happen? Where do you get your information? Because I tell you, going through a collision, there's a pretty standard practice that we all know about being in the industry. It goes to the insurance reaches out to you, blah, 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 right? But the customer's on the other side getting frustrated, and the consumer today is different than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and 15 years ago. Today, it's that connectivity that you need, that instant gratification, right? It's the social media that says, I know exactly what's going on at every given point in time, or I can go ping it and figure out what's going on, right? It's the Amazon Prime where I can track my order as it's coming. How do we do that And how do we get that information from those people today to say, how do we, as an industry, as a software solution provider and a data provider, how do we enable the industry to move towards the expectation of the consumer? So I know that sounds crazy, that it's just the consumer that would be my ideal guest, but I think that speaks to the volume of where we need to go.
Yeah, and you made a good point. Consumers also crave transparency because they're seeing these quick purchases and these experiences that are just so easy and effortless for them, but they also want to see it end to end.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think, you take that consumer, and then what you do is you follow up with either another guest the following week that's coming from the industry, and you address some of those comments that were made or conclusions made from having the consumer on, right? And we try and draw that as a continual loop. And I think that's going to be kind of interesting. Consumers don't realize what goes down in the repair process. They just don't, right? Or in the claim process. They just see what they get from a claim rep, or what sometimes they don't even hear from a claim rep. It comes right from the shop. So how do we make this industry flow better? And that'll be fun.
Great.
That would be fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Last question. I'm going to throw you a softball. Where can we find you on a Friday night? And I know you're a Chicago guy, so where is the best pizza in the city?
Well, you said one question, that's two. So I'll get you there. But I get you. Interestingly enough, and where you find me on a Friday night is a great question. So Friday night for me is hockey. I got into hockey many years ago, and I still play on a regular basis with a couple group of guys. We do we call it a little bit of our own club hockey. We get 10 guys on a side, so it's 20 guys that play. If you're familiar with hockey, it's 2 forward lines and 2 defensive lines on each side. We mix up teams every week, and we post it, and we go out and we play, and then afterwards the guys will hang out. And bring something to drink, and sometimes we order some food in, and we hang out at the rink afterwards. And so that's a Friday night a lot of times for me.
How did you feel about the Blues winning?
When you go back and look at the history of the Blues and the fact that they have not won a Stanley Cup, even though I'm a Chicago and a Blackhawks fan, and you look at St. Louis and say, no, man, I was rooting for them outside of the Boston Bruins winning. So I was excited for them. Now, that being said, when the season starts, it's all Blackhawks. It's all Blackhawks, and let's kick their butt. Because I coach hockey as well. So that's some of the things you find on a Friday night. I'm either playing or I'm coaching. So I coach high school hockey. I'm going on my 10th year of high school hockey. And in those 10 years, we've had 3 teams that have made it to nationals. So we've had some fun going to nationals. We have not brought home a national championship yet. That would be really fun to do. But
this year.
Yeah. It's kind of the Cubby saying, you're going to get them again next year, right? Although the Cubs have kind of done. So that being said, pizza. See, everyone talks about Chicago pizza, and it's a deep dish pizza. Not everyone's a lover of deep dish pizza, but Gino's East in the city is the place everyone talks about for deep dish pizza, right? That's the classic. But I got to be honest with you, if anyone's ever heard of Aurelio's Pizza, it's kind of stemmed out of Chicago a little bit and grown out there. Aurelio's got good pizza. I think it gets down to the sauce. See, in Chicago, it's about the sauce, right? I think there's a little more sauce, a little more spice to it, but I would go with Aurelio's.
Oh,
really my favorite pizza.
We'll have to check it out. Well, thanks for the recommendation.
Not a problem. When are you going to come to Chicago? That's the thing. We got to go. We got to do this in Chicago.
Oh, we can do a live show. That's great.
I think we should do a live show. We'll do it from Aurelio's or Gino's, and we'll have pizza in the background.
We'll get them to sponsor.
We'll get them to sponsor. Hey, then we can get someone like Patrick Kane, one of those guys, to come in and help us out. Maybe we'll just get one of the Hawks to come over.
Now we're talking.
There you go. Now, see, this is going to be a good thing.
I'm excited. Thanks, Don. This is really great.
Solera Innovation Labs is a podcast produced by Solera, a global leader in data-driven solutions and services. Solera collects and translates complex data into actionable insights for automotive, identity, and property partners across 90 countries and counting. Learn more at solera.com or find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.